I'm Grace Fortson.
I'm Sasha Mayer.
I'm Audrey Lauer.
I'm Aoife Duffy. And how can we better utilize music in society?
What is music? Most of us would describe music as simple notes in class, but what we don't realize is that music is a lot more complex than this. Most people know that music has the ability to fill the heart and soul, but what we don't realize is that music can actually fill our brains as well.
So how does music affect us neurologically? Our research pinpointed some of the most crucial ways that music affects the brain, and we found a really strong connection between music and memory. Our brains can actually associate a certain song with our memory, and they place that connection in our autobiographical memory system, which resides in what's called the medial prefrontal cortex region of your brain. So this part of the brain follows the structure of a song and the auditory cues and can allow you to recall a memory. These cues include melody, harmony, and the structure of a song, so when our brain recognizes them, they recall a memory.
One of the most intriguing ways that music impacts us neurologically lies in the brains of music students. Contrary to the popular belief that listening to classical music can make you smarter, this so-called Mozart effect only lasts for about 10 to 15 minutes after listening to music. So although there's not much to be said for listening to music and enhanced cognitive function, there is a lot of evidence for learning music and enhanced cognitive function. Collective research has shown that learning music, even for as little as 1 to 2 years, can lead to elevated degrees of memory and attention, seemingly because of the mental strain it takes to play music in concert with other people. When we dive into the neurology of a music student's brain, we see enhanced volume and density of gray matter in a specific region known as the inferior frontal gyrus, which is lit up on that picture. The inferior frontal gyrus is associated with syntax processing of language and music, verbal and tonal working memory, and cognitive flexibility, or the ability of your brain to switch from one aspect of a concept to another. The research also showed more volume in areas associated with visual and visuospatial functions, which for music students means the ability to visualize yourself playing an instrument. So, what does all this enhanced volume of brain matter mean? Because there's so many different neural pathways, there's larger and more developed area of gray matter, such as the visual, auditory, language, and reasoning pathways I talked about earlier. There are numerous possibilities for change and improvement in those areas. Learning music has positive implications on the brain.
The human race overflows with passion, but too often these feelings consume us. Elements of love, hate, joy, and wrath all possess this possibility. Music is an outlet for us to channel our feelings. The root of music contributes to channeling feelings and emotions in our society faces. Gilder Lerman declared, quote, "Wars create their unique antagonists who transform their empathy, concern, anger, and other emotions into poetry, prose, or in our time, popular music." End quote. These leaders used their fame to promote joy and peace in chaotic times. So although music is a source for entertainment and a piece of our culture, it isn't limited to these titles. It can bring clarity to a clouded mind and bring healing to a broken heart.
As a society, our goal is to maintain peace, but in our pursuit of peace, we really haven't been peaceful. But regardless of this failed attempt, music has significantly decreased the amount of darkness that we have experienced. One example can be found in the singing revolution of 2007. This revolution examines the way in which the youth of Estonia came together to fight with their weapon of choice. Soviet oppression had been present in Estonia for decades, meaning that this youthful group had experienced this oppression their entire lives. So you would think that they would be ready to eliminate the presence of the Soviets with whatever violent means necessary, but this was not the case in Estonia. The youth of this country did not come together to burn buildings or start an uprising. They simply came together to sing. Quote, "The young people, without any political party and without any politicians, just came together. Not only tens of thousands, but hundreds of thousands, to gather together and to sing and to give this nation a new spirit." End quote. In the words of Bob Marley, quote, "One good thing about music, when it hits you, you feel no pain." End quote. Music is a safe resource which allows us to fight without encouraging violence or inflicting pain.
So how is music affecting us currently? As Audrey just talked about, historically music has prevented violence. But today we can see it unifying communities through bridging cultural divides. The ability of music to teach different cultural perspectives is exemplified in the experiences of choirs. Let's look at David Morales, whose choir joined that of Helen Steffens in order to perform a program of African American spirituals and gospels. He helped his choir gain cultural understanding through teaching the music in the same way the authors would have intended, in this case a call and response method instead of the more Euro-traditional reading written music. He also relied on Helen Steffens to impart her personal experiences of this music to the choir as an African American, to his mostly non-African American choir. He stated, "Our culture is so fearful of such vulnerability. My choir needs to see an African American woman do it her way to have these experiences." Patricia Harbour, a diversity consultant working with the same institution as Morales, summed up the message by saying the culture, history, and traditions of any group of people live in its music. Performing the music of an ethnic group other than your own takes you inside another's world. The best way to connect cultures is to understand them, and thus, creating a community of cultural understanding is fundamentally important in bridging the cultural divides of today.
Alright, we have identified the fact that music has clearly had a sweeping impact on today's society. But what we really want this presentation to promote is the idea that music has the potential to produce a great range of future implications as well. We want to focus on the potential of music specifically in the workforce. There was a study that proved that listening to music while working reduced the time spent on individual tasks. It paced and energized workers and increased the tempo of the work at times that were usually characterized by fatigue. So if we increase individuals' productivity, it would actually lead to an increase in economic productivity. This means that the increase in economic productivity would lead to an increase in cash flow, which would actually decrease economic stress on society. We recognize that the addition of music in the workforce would have a lot of financial hurdles because it would be expensive for employers to actually put sound systems and everything into their working environment. However, if employers were to do this, the increased production would actually make up for this sacrifice. So while this application of music is nothing new and has been used since World War I, it's a very tangible and applicable benefit that is overlooked by most employers today.
So for many people, it is very easy to learn the lyrics to a song rather quickly. And once they know the lyrics to the song, it's rare for them to forget. And so memorization is a very big part in education and schooling due to big tests and quizzes. Although many students have troubles with memorizing important information that is given to them throughout the average school day. And by putting important information into lyrics of a song, it can be translated as a way for students to remember information. Although this may not work for every class, it is definitely something to consider. Using this approach to learning could also be a way to increase the student involvement in the classroom by being more of a fun approach to learning. By using music as a way to learn, it could be more relaxing and altogether could cause less stress on students when it comes to studying for big tests.
One other future implication of music is using music therapy to promote a harmonious society. So music therapy has been studied in Germany in clinical and school settings in preventing violence. It can have many positive effects on the patients taking advantage of it, which are of course part of the society that we're discussing. Studies have shown that when troubled adolescents who are lacking in communication skills listen to music during therapy sessions, they can actually create a stronger bond with their therapist and thus increase the effectiveness of the therapy session. Though it may not work for everyone because for some patients, music and sounds can be a trigger for emotional distress. The potential benefits of this, however, for adolescents as they mature and this technique becomes more widespread in society are endless in terms of quality of life, and the repercussions of this on a large scale quickly add up for preventing violence and promoting peace.
Music is no longer just a series of notes and clefs we once believed it to be. Through our research, we explored the physical, historical, social, and future impacts of music. To find that its effects on us are more complex than we ever believed. Music is so influential in our lives, yet we don't take advantage of it as we should. We propose music therapy and an increase in music in school and in the workplace as major ways we can utilize music to better society. Granted, these solutions aren't cut and dry and perfectly easy to implement, but they are reasonable and filled with benefits. We conclude that music has an endless potential in our daily lives.
Thank you.
Okay, a couple of questions. Eva, in what way did you improve your ability to work with a group as a result of this project?
Well, working in this group, they're all very intelligent people, obviously. So they really kept me accountable for my work and staying on time and just doing all of my work and making sure everything was right and accurate.
Audrey, what is an example of a compelling argument from one of your peers' individual reports that you decided to exclude from your team presentation, and why?
Well, when we started our research, we actually started focusing on a different kind of, we came at it with from a different angle. We found this cool article where it talked about how a choir, when they started singing, everyone's heartbeats were at a different, they were just different, and then as they started singing, everyone's like settled down and matched each other's, and so we were going to focus on that. I think that was Grace's lens. But we kind of turned over and we started focusing on all these other lenses because there was so much more, and so that was one thing that we decided not to include.
Sasha, what was the strongest counter argument to the solution or conclusion your team identified, and why?
Well, I think there's a lot of controversy over how much music actually influences us. There's not a lot of like hard scientific evidence. Like not everybody knows that music affects your brain this way. And so people would debate over whether having music in the workplace or in school would actually benefit students and like to the degree in which it would benefit people. But we found from our research that the specific ways that music impacts us, it increases the volume and density of our gray matter in music students who are learning it, and it enhances our memory and attention span, which can be used to, if we use music in the workplace and schools, it can be used to better productivity.
And Grace, describe an argument from one of your peers' individual reports that made you think differently about your team's solution or conclusion.
I think that Sasha's arguments about the Mozart effect, which we didn't really have a lot of time to include in our presentation, but she mentioned, that simply listening to music doesn't make you smarter like a lot of people think it does. And I think that definitely influenced the way that we were going to implement music in society further, because we can't simply just play classical music and expect people's IQ scores to increase. So we have to use it in more creative ways, like improve productivity or improve memory, but not simply just like make everyone smarter by listening to classical music.
Thanks.